Welcome, viewers. Namaste and a very good evening. I was very fortunate to be born and raised in a belief system where I always heard these words: Ahimsa Paramo Dharmo. Non-violence is the highest religion. Forgive under any circumstances. Bless those who hurt you. This world is our extended family. I believe that these are the basic values of any great belief system and an advanced civilization. So during our pilgrimage to Pushkar when I was a kid, and Pushkar is in Ajmer, we would always make sure that we paid our respects to the Ajmer Dargah of Khwajaji as well. And during my tender school years, I learned to respect and revere Christ, who forgave his enemies, even during his greatest trial. The same values that Lord Krishna or Lord Rama had exemplified in their own lives. I was raised to love all and humbly bow and seek blessings from the saints and sages of all religions. I'm proud of that heritage and upbringing that taught me these values. But what happened next was horrifying. Where did the Hindus go wrong that there are ongoing campaigns and attacks against India and the Hindu community, their belief systems, their religious symbols in USA and elsewhere? This has become a topic of great interest for me, and I'm sure for many of you. So let's see if we can find answers to our questions. We have in our studio today Utsav Chakravarty from Hindu Pact. We have Richa Gautam from Kona, and we have Nivedita Haran. So let me just briefly introduce each one of them. Utsav Chakravarty is an architect by profession, and he has been presenting the case of Hindu and other subaltern communities to thought leaders in Washington, D.C. for more than 18 years. He is an astute observer of geopolitical trends inside the Washington Beltway, and his works have been presented to the lawmakers at the Capitol Hill and to the representatives of the Human Rights Commission at the United Nations. And Utsav's interest in geopolitics, socio-political movements, and uh, religions, it stems from his exposure to the history of architecture, the built environment, and its impact on people and civilization. So, welcome, Utsavji. And then we have Richa Gautam, who has worked in data analytics for over 20 years as a business owner and in leading companies. And she has worked extensively on Indian American causes and Hindu American advocacy, besides having experience in fields like advocacy for domestic violence cases, human rights advocacy, art of living, and children's education. And then we have Nivedita Haran. Nivedita Haran is a retired IS Secretary, Government of India, and she's joining us straight from India. So, welcome our esteemed panel. And my first question is going to be for Utsav Chakravarty. So, first of all, can you give us some background to our viewers of this current anti-Hindu, anti-India campaigns in the US? And I know that this is a vast, you know, field, and there are so many things happening, difficult to keep track. So if others also want to pitch in, please feel free to do so.
Thank you so much, Anjali ji, and thank you for the warm welcome. And I'm very happy to be in the company of very esteemed panelists. Uh, so let me start by saying that there is a concerted, well organized, and very well funded effort to target Hindus, not just in America, but across the world, with the aim at demonizing India from a geostrategic perspective. So that is being an ongoing process. It is very well funded and very well supported by global actors. So I'll explain to you how it works. It basically works in 5 steps. The first step is to dent the soft power of what it means to be Hindu. Whether it is yoga, whether it is any contribution that this 7,000 plus year old civilizational dharmic traditions have been giving to the world. They are all soft power that empowers Hindus around the world and other people around the world. So the first step is to dent that and destroy that. So that happens at the first level. The second level is to layer on top of it a narrative where Hindus are supposed to be fascist. So their belief system, their traditions, their historical upbringing tends to be in the direction of fascism. That's the next level of propaganda that is layered on top of the demolition of the soft power. The third layer of propaganda, it becomes more specific, where then once the first two have been established, then Hindus are specifically accused of being Islamophobic or some other phobic, where there is an enemy that is created who the Hindu is trying to demolish or destroy. And then on top of that, the fourth layer is the layer of who are these bad Hindus, quote unquote, that have been established in the first three layers. And those bad Hindus are Hindutva people, which essentially means people who are practicing Hindus, who take pride in being Hindus, who are the driving force of maintaining and perpetuating and propagating this civilizational narrative. So once these first four steps are achieved, the fifth step is pretty easy, which is to demand the demolition of the first four that have been established and to perpetuate it using a larger and larger ring of coalition that can be built against it. So, this is in a nutshell the 5 step process of targeted anti Hindu hate that is being not just generated in America and Western Europe, but across the world with an aim of demolishing India as a country.
You have explained very explicitly the 5 steps. So, is there anything Nivedita or Richa, do you want to you want to add to what Utsavji just said? And Nivedita, you can add from the Indian perspective. Richa, you come with your own set of experiences that you would you like to
Yes,
help building this explanation that Utsavji has just given to the viewers. Please go ahead.
absolutely. I think Utsada has really given us a very, very good, strong, solid foundation on which to discuss this issue. And it's a very serious issue. We cannot take this, easy and lying down. Then, and it's true, like Utsada said, Usavji said that, this is actually happening, and we have seen this rise over the last few years, that there has been a direct attack on us on the ground, but it has been building over time, attacking on the soft power. The whole idea and the whole mechanisms are developed within the academia. So academic Hinduphobia has been identified for a long, long time. I think there have been many books written on it, and how the religious symbols, or Lord Ganesha or our goddesses, or any all of those are attacked within the academic fold, right? That is also the area from which stems the media narratives, and currently the social media narratives as well. And because the social media platforms give voice to the lowest common denominator, you really see this hate spewing out very strong, and in a very, very carnal and strong language. So that, as the NCRI report that was released by Rutgers, it points out that whenever there is hate on social media or within media, it directly translates into hate on the ground. So we are seeing actual crimes happening in the United States. We are seeing that in Canada. We are seeing our temples being vandalized on a day-to-day basis. You hear one case or the other of temples being vandalized, statues of Gandhi being pretty much taken down almost everywhere where they existed, whether in Canada, even in Ghana, even in, of course, United States, right? So those are like real symbols of Indian, peace, non-violence, all the values that Anjali ji you mentioned, right? So that is directly translating on the ground. One of a Hindu student was killed in Purdue University recently. We've had slurs and hate crimes at Taco Bells and on the streets everywhere. So we are not seeing just simple bullying. We are seeing real hate crimes happening on the ground. And what Utsada just said, from soft to the hard, it is translating also into policy, right? When you see the caste discrimination policy coming in, the final and the biggest trope on Hinduism is the colonial construct of caste. And to revive that at this stage
Yeah.
is, and that's my final comment, is I think a very, very big issue at
Yeah.
this time. So we will go
So,
into the depth of
Richard,
it, but
I'm
to
sorry to
build the
interrupt.
framework that Utsula gave, yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I mean, you bring up a very, very interesting point, and I'm going to elaborate on this. But before we move further on this particular topic of caste and no, these attacks in the academia, I want to ask Nivedita. Nivedita, from an Indian perspective, where would you agree that such things are happening in India, or have you been witness to any such happenings in India where the symbols of Hinduism or symbols of peace or love, which Hinduism signifies, that is being attacked by, um, by people who
Yeah,
hate India or who hate
yeah,
it?
Anjali. Yes, thanks, Anjali. I think listening to Utsavji and to Richa ji, what I can understand, and this I was not privy to this kind of an analysis maybe even 6 months back. But now what I understand is that this has been a very long-term conspiracy. It's not something that has happened only yesterday or last year, and that is shocking. And what for me is important, and what I keep asking people who I know and who I have worked with, especially from the diplomatic community, is that what is their analysis? Were they seeing this as they were working outside the country, let's say 10 years back, 15 years back? And what I conclude is that probably uh, it was all happening, but happening in a more covert manner. But now it has built up because probably it's a kind of inbuilt envy, a kind of jealousy, and also it is also because probably the docility which we saw, which we probably showed earlier, we are more in the face now. By we I mean Indians and of course Hindus. And maybe that is one of the reasons. And I would like the other two panelists to talk about that also.
Yeah, absolutely. So the love, the docility that you talk about is, I think it's very much similar to what I when I gave the introduction and what I said in the beginning, that that's how my upbringing was, and I'm sure it's the same thing with a lot of other Hindu girls. When we are taught to love, respect everyone, and I still believe in those values. Absolutely. I still love, admire, value all religions, all prophets, but I would ask Utsav ji that who do you think are the aggressors and perpetrators who are causing this harm, inflicting damage to our property, killing people? Who are these people?
Thank you. I just wanted to address the question that Nivedita ji just asked in order for me to elaborate on the question that you just asked, Anjali ji. So, Nivedita is the reason the diplomatic folks that the people in the diplomatic corps, people in the security circles, in the intelligence circles, they did not see this, or even if they saw it, they did not see the scale of this kind of activities before, was because since the end of World War II, conflicts have taken different roles and different natures. So first it was the Cold War, where it was, the spy versus spy, ideological conflict. Then it was the decentralized, small scale conflict, where real wars were not fought anymore, and most of the wars were proxy wars, where one team, the Khalistan movement, the Kashmiri Jihad movement, the Maoist movement. So it was a low intensity proxy war concept. Since the last 15 to 20, 18 years, that intensity proxy war concept has transformed into what is called full spectrum warfare, where you have to control the social media space to the mind space of a 15-year-old guy, and that entire space, including the cell phone and the spectrum of the signaling that is out there, the cell phone spectrum to the information spectrum that is out there, that entire space has to be fought for. And that is the next generation warfare that we are facing. So what you are seeing here in terms of targeted Hinduphobia that is scaled up to this level at a global scale that we are observing is nothing short of a fifth generation warfare. And that's why you see more of it out in the open. The same actors who in the past were involved in proxy war and were funding it, were training people for it, were indulging it in those activities, are also the same people who are running this fifth generation war. It would be very naive for us to believe, and this is to answer your question, Anjali ji, who these people are. So, it would be naive for us to believe that this is just happening from thin air, like the organizational called Equality Lab just throws itself up out of thin air and there is no background to it. If you look into each of these organizations, and I'm going to name a few, Overseas Forum for the Minorities of India, OFMI, Equality Labs, Hindus for Human Rights, and Indian American Muslim Council. If you look into these names and the power that they wield, you will see that there are very powerful actors behind it. There are nations and their intelligence agencies that are operating behind it. And I would encourage people to go on this and look for Disinfo Lab reports online that go into extreme details based on public information available into each of these groups, and then maps out much of the information that we are discussing here in a very cogent and a very informed way. And this is actual warfare. It's information warfare that we see here.
Very true, Utsavji. You have kind of put all this in a geopolitical context. So, if you could also expand a little bit more of this geopolitical context, and where does the American Hindu fit into this, and how can it be related to the how would you relate it to the Indian perspective? So,
See, the American Hindu is very important. The American Hindu is important because he's one of the richest, one of the most educated, diaspora religious minority living at this point of time in the most powerful country of the world. At this point of time, I'm not going to predict where America will be 2 years from now. Uh, so, because of that, it is important for us to understand that the American Hindu and his or her future generation is a prime target for disinformation warfare, and to be able to divide, to be able to disempower and deplatform, and to turn the American Hindu against India would be the primary objective of all those people who hate India and who hate Hindus. And what you see unfolding at different scales, at different platforms, at different levels is an effort in that direction. So that is how I can sum up the role of the American Hindu in this context.
Very true, Sivji, very true. And I would like to get Richa ji's and Nivedita ji's perspective as well. Uh, Richa, if you can please, from your experience and from your perspective, please expand on what Utsavji just said.
Absolutely. I think Utsava is giving us a good framework to, build on, because I can go into the little bit of the nitty gritty, especially also what Nivedita ji said about us being the docile force earlier. I mean, let us not forget that after 2014, when the Modi government took over in India, there has been a concerted effort across the globe to malign that and sort of build a network against the government. Whatever policy they may bring up has been brought to the United States, and an anti sort of warfare has been built, anti campaign against CAA, whether it's the farm laws, whatever was happening in India also played out, in the United States and across the world, actually. So those factors have made the American Hindu much more, first of all, conscious of his Indian and Hindu identity, and also made us all stand up and build our own understanding. First of all, even when we were not so engaged with India, now we are. We have become no longer that docile force who was just a cog in the wheel in the United States, building on the American corporations or the NASA or wherever, in the academia. We have been the stronghold of America, building America from the ground up. And now we also have our own identity to take care of, because we are under attack directly. Hinduphobia is no longer a proxy warfare, as Utsav said. It is out in the open, everywhere you see it. So the cancellation of the Hindu voice is still happening. We are not allowed to speak on mainstream platforms. We do not have a voice on the mainstream platform. So we are speaking right now, but is this voice ever going to carry in New York Times, Washington Post, or NPR? No. We've given interviews there and they have not been published, or they have not been carried forward. So that is a very important point to make, that the warfare is direct, and it is also indirect in terms of canceling our voices. So did I
Very
answer
true.
everything? Yeah.
Very true. I would come to Nivedita. Can you tell me, from an Indian perspective, if whatever they are saying, what Richa ji and Utsav ji just said, is that something that you see, uh, you see a similar kind of experience, or your friends, you've been through similar experiences in the Indian subcontinent?
Anjali, that was always there. I mean, 40 years in the service, 38 years in the service, there were always people who were, um, in my view, who were anti-India. They were opportunists, but these people were always there. But now that, from what I hear and what I read, I think it's something that is happening across the globe, and it's even some states sponsored. What Utsavji said is, I think, a very, very serious thing. And the second point that what I also probably would assign this to is probably the growth of the social media. Uh, it's And I think in India we have it, but in India it's as you know, everything is so politicized. It probably doesn't come across as such a huge thing right now. It may be made into a very huge thing during the during the electioneering and so on, but it's not such a huge thing. But I think the government has to wake up and do something very serious about what's happening globally regarding this Hindu phobia.
And do you
I
think?
want to, Anjali ji, just to build, just to complete the circle of the conversation we were having. I think Utsada also brought up the point about how equality labs and other players. Who are the players? That was one of the things, and I want to just tie the loop with what Nivedita just said, and also all of us just spoke, to circle back on that. The forces that are acting in the United States are also very active in India. If you read the book Snakes in the Ganga with Rajiv ji, and I have been following this on the ground, so I was aware of these things. The Omidyar network funds a lot of the miscommunication and anti-India communication that happens in the United States. But at the same time, they have a ground level force that is working to build mechanisms and build anti-India force out there, through lots of the funding that goes there. So it is a very, very deep nexus. It is not, we see players like, okay, these are the people who are conducting the dismantling global Hindutva conference, so Audrey Shrishki is a villain, but or it's Tenmudi Sundarajan of, maybe she's the one who's got all these Khalistani forces working with her, and anti-India forces like the Kashmir, standing Kashmir group. So we are seeing this everywhere. We are seeing the manifestation of these deep-seated networks who are funding these, propaganda machines. And that is all we see. We see the surface. We see the USCIRF. But do we see the internal nexus that goes behind it, the internal money that goes behind it? I think that is a very big question. And so the forces are very big, very deep, and it is a fifth generation warfare for sure, using artificial intelligence and all other latest tools. And I think I'm going to close this just by saying that of course we have to fight this at our level, but I think it is important, like Nivedita ji said, that the government, and at the government level, at the UN level, wherever there are forces and mechanisms to address this, I think there has to be a stronger, diplomatic effort by India, because we as individuals can only do so much in the United States.
So I think we have talked a lot about what is going on, and I know it's kind of it's scary enough, but let's divert our attention to the why. So we understand these forces. I mean, Nivedita ji kind of touched upon it, saying that yes, it's kind of jealousy, or Hindus are doing very well, as Utsav ji pointed out. They're educated, and they are very well-to-do community. But what else do you think that could be the reason why Hindus are being attacked? Is it just because they are very well educated, they are doing very well in America? But could there be more reasons behind it? Could it be something related to what is going on in India, the current political scenario? So let's just have a discussion on that. Let's hear you.
So I think it's a combination of many things that are involved in the at things that are at this level, as Richa ji pointed out. When Omidyar is getting involved in it, when George Soros is getting involved in it, it's not one thing. It's a whole, that's why I was saying, using the word spectrum. It's a whole spectrum of different things that are driving these forces. But it is not just the success of the American Hindu community and their growing power in the Western societies that are driving a pushback against them, against us, because we are in America. And it is also the fact that India, as a nation of 1.4 billion people, a thriving, diverse democracy with a very robust socio-economic system. Now, I underline the word robust, because that is something that is very unique in this world. So when you have that kind of a society and a country more or less stay united and achieve a 5 to 8%, 10% growth rate year after year, and become a politically stable country, then you become afraid of its role in the changing world order. And I see the India that is today, that you see today, as a country that has the potential to play a very, very important role. It is already beginning to play it, but going forward, it will play a even bigger role in the global order, whether it is the economic order or the geostrategic order. And you want that society to be divided, to be eating out of your hands, and to be working for you. So that is the goal of multiple power sources around the world. And it is even more intended because historically they had done it successfully. Historically, India was the place that made the Islamic world rich, both in terms of money and in terms of slaves. India was the place that made the colonial powers rich, both in terms of money and in terms of human resources. So there has been a trend of 800 to 900 years of this template that they can look back at, and they want to repeat it. And each of these entities are trying to repeat it in a different world framework. So you cannot have slavery today that will go and build mosques in Bukhara and then be killed. It doesn't happen anymore. So you do a different kind of tactic to achieve the same result. That is how I can put it politely.
But we do hear of such things still happening to a lot of minority communities in India's neighboring countries. Right. We Hindu Pact, the group the organization that you are from, they are involved in certain projects where they are trying to help these little girls, these little children. So it's still existing, but it's just that when 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 they enslave someone, then they can only make that work if the victim is poor and the victim does not have a voice. And I think currently it's very hard to do that to such a big population in India. So probably some other tactics are being tried. And one of them, I would say, is caste, right? That is being used as a tool. So I would like to bring in Richa ji here. And you have a lot of experience dealing with these caste issues here in the Western world. Would you like to talk about that?
Absolutely. So I think, yeah, to break out into caste issues, I think I definitely want to talk about it. We've been sort of blindsided. Equality Labs comes up again when we talk about this issue. We were blindsided when the Equality Lab survey came up in around 2018. We sort of thought that, okay, this is such an unscientific survey. Who's ever going to notice it, and how is it ever going to impact us? It's just one of those, small organizations doing some, dirty work, basically, with very little resources and building this. But building this sort of an analysis where they said that 1/4 of the Dalits in the United States have been abused or violently attacked by the other Hindus, who are supposed to be the superior caste or something like that. Which for us, as Hindus who have had a diluted caste identity, as has been shown by numerous survey, even though it's a colonial construct and it was imposed on India, we've all been sort of raised with the very egalitarian ideas. And so that Carnegie Endowment survey, which was conducted in 2020, and is a much more recent survey, much more scientific methodology, has clearly shown that caste as an identity, is not very visible among the Hindu Americans. It is caste discrimination is absolutely non-existent. It's very, very minuscule, statistically insignificant. So from that angle, I would have thought that Carnegie Endowment survey would have been much more popular, given its more robust, scientific, yes. So scientific, understanding, and also, Equality Labs being this entity with very little backing, I thought. But it is definitely a political agenda, because everywhere we go, Equality Labs is building caste discrimination policy in California, in various universities, and is trying to put in, some resolutions everywhere. And we've been fighting that on the ground in California, and talking to universities, talking to corporates, and I think raising awareness. So there were two legs of the caste discrimination, discussion and discourse in the media and social media. One was Equality Labs, which I just addressed as a poor survey, and the second is the Cisco case. The Cisco case, where two boys, Brahmin boys, were implicated, saying that they were harassing a Dalit employee. And when we started studying, there is a website called castgate.org, which really documents all of this very strongly and very seriously, as to how there seems to be a lot of false charges that are being placed on these two boys, because there are a lot of loopholes in this case. And that is why, there have been cases filed by the Cal State University, where again, a caste resolution was passed. recently by the student bodies and also by Hindu American Foundation, to challenge that this caste discrimination case is actually full of loopholes. And of course, the imposition of caste policy in the United States is actually unconstitutional, right? So those are some of the points that we really need to make. And the most important thing at this point is to create a groundswell movement for us as Indian Americans and Hindu Americans to understand that caste policy is not just a simple policy that is being. It is something that will make an impact on, and I want to make one last point on this. It'll make an impact on tech workers in California for the long time to come. So I think we need to create awareness, and there has to be an awareness building campaign by Hindu organizations. But I think, yes, I think I've lost that point, but maybe I'll come back to it. I had one more
Yeah.
point too.
No, that's okay. Aware, you have already. I think you've already made your point, but it was yes, very well said. Awareness is definitely what is required in this day and age for the when it comes to Hindu Americans. But I would like to know from Nivedita ji, from an Indian perspective. Yes, we all say that caste system originated from India. Things have changed so much over the years. That is what I think, and that's what many of my friends and colleagues think. But from an Indian perspective, what would you say about this incident that happened in California, where we found so many loopholes? And how would you, as an Indian, look at or view something like this?
Yeah, Anjali, I don't think I'm competent to comment on the California incident because I haven't, except reading the news article, I haven't read much about it. But casteism has been something. I have two aspects to it. For me, in my personal life, caste had no meaning, nothing. I was brought up in a family where we were totally open. There was no discrimination, whether it was caste or religion. And I think many of my generation of the middle class were brought up in that manner. However, in the government, we have, as per the constitution, we have the reservation, which is there for the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes, and that is very intensely followed. But I want to mention a couple of things here. One is I have friends whose children now have refused to whose parents, so to speak, had been part of the reservation quota system, but whose children have denied and they have refused to be a part of it, and they have not accepted it. I know a girl, she has actually said that she will, even if she gets into the civil service, she will not get in through the quota. She does not want it. I think that is the kind of stand that we need. One. The second thing is that, uh, you know, what, by bringing it up, and let's face it, the discriminatory part of the caste system was actually foul, is unacceptable in any sane civilized world, and therefore by bringing it up again and reviving it in some other country, uh, I think there is a larger conspiracy behind it. Why I think, I'm sure there is a larger conspiracy behind it, and I think that should be nipped in the bud. It should not be allowed to happen. In India, where we are talking about having reduced the discriminatory side of caste system, I think it will be extremely unfortunate if it is brought back now in some other form in some other countries.
And isn't it laughable that the Prime Minister of India, Modi ji, the President of India, uh, Draupadi, Draupadi Murmuru, and both of them, they are not from forward castes. I
Yeah.
mean, how much more evidence do you need of saying that caste system is still existing? I mean, I'm not saying that it's completely gone, but we have come a long way, and then to use that as a tool to target Hinduism in the United States of America, that too in a place like California, it's laughable.
I think if I can, also that you wanted to make a point, I think, but I want to quickly say this. I think I sort of remembered the point that you're right. See, I did a study on the dismantling global Hindutva conference, and I did a AI-based sentiment analysis to understand as to why they want to dismantle global Hindutva or whatever they call as Hindutva. What do they define Hindutva as, first of all? Right. So, and I'm moving from caste into Hindu only because they are two seem to be a very connected entity in the sense that the imposition of caste by the colonials was the whole idea of the divide and rule policy that they perpetrated during that time. And why is this happening at this time is also because they see the Hindu across the world as a consolidated force that is really, currently no longer docile, and it does have a voice and has sort of come up the ranks and the echelons to at least be empowered and have some sort of say in the day to day functioning of the world. And so, if, as you said, the affirmative action in India is no longer spoken about. The fact that the society there has become so much more egalitarian, and in the current perspective, when I studied the DGFC, what I found was that they defined Hindutva as that idea where the Hindus actually come together, and actually start working and talking in a casteless and a more cohesive manner, whether it's voting for the BJP. That was discussed extensively during that conference as to why the Dalits have suddenly started voting, for the BJP. Why are they not against that, and why everybody, whether it's the Northeast, whether it is other parts of the country, which were essentially say anti-BJP, or so there is a political element to it which we cannot ignore. There is also the connectivity with the Indian framework which we cannot ignore even though we are in the diaspora. So those are some aspects of why caste is being imposed on us again, for so the colonization of the Indian mind, to bring again, because we are, as a second generation, as Carnegie Newman found, second generation Hindu Americans have absolutely no caste identity. Literally, they don't understand it. They've never been educated on it. So I think I will basically stop there, though there is so much more to talk about it, maybe at another time.
Yeah, absolutely. Utsav ji, just coming to you, do you think that all these topics that we brought up just now about casteism, about attacking temples, or using different kind of tools, psychological, emotional, do you think there are non-American actors who could be perpetrators? I know you
Yeah.
mentioned, you touched on some, but maybe we
Yeah.
can talk a little
I'll
bit
just,
more about it.
since we were discussing caste, I'll just pick on that and continue on that. So if you look at the whole issue of caste in America, you have to understand that this has nothing to do with India, actually. And it is interesting because all four of us sitting here are of Indian origin, and therefore we automatically gravitate towards the conversation, assuming that it has something to do with India. But I was actually, my wife, who is not of Indian origin, she pointed it out. So she observed the whole caste thing, and she pointed it out to me that you guys are looking at it the wrong way. The whole conversation on caste is just to find a fault line that mirrors the race fault line of the Western society. So that's the closest they could find something amongst the Hindus that they could use to mirror the race narrative that is very much the talking point of Western society's divisions. And that's all it is. They don't even know, most of the people who are making decisions on the caste based issues that are being brought in America, whether it is the Cal State university system, or whether it is the Cisco case or the judges, they have absolutely zero idea and zero interest in knowing about caste or jati or affirmative action in India, any of that. They don't care. They just see it as a race mirroring of a race narrative. And that is the intention of those who are bringing it up here. It has nothing to do with India. So now going to the next point about who those people are. So you will see that if you just look at how the cast thing, I'll give you a timeline of all these actors, who these people are. First, the casting was supported, promoted, and fully encouraged in the American mainstream by the Christian evangelists. Uh, they saw it as a tool to divide the Hindus in India, and that's why they promoted it here, because they needed money from here. Many of these conversion factories, if I can call it that way, were focused on sending money from here, and they needed to drum up the narrative here to get their parishioners and the churchgoers donate money for the conversion activities. That's how it started in the early 2000s. Then it morphed into a movement where suddenly the Khalistanis got involved, and that's when you know that geopolitical actor. I mean, who in 2007 supported Khalistanis? Guess who? Which was the only country in the world that was pouring millions of dollars in 2007 to support a movement that had died physically 10 years before that? You know that country was. So suddenly they pick up the caste narrative. Ironically, Khalistanis themselves don't even allow non-Jat Sikhs to join the movement. I mean, a Khatri Sikh or a Bape Sikh is treated like untouchable in a Khalistani, So that's how castes they are. And so they had Bhajan Singh Bhinder, who is a Khalistani who was who took asylum in Canada and then in America, who was trying to sell Stinger missiles to India in the early 90s. That guy becomes the champion of caste movement in America. He suddenly created this organization called OFMI. And then you see people like Tenmori Soundarajan and all these, Church of South India, they coming together. Suddenly you see the Khalistanis, the Christian evangelists, and lo behold, Sharmin Hussain become the part of Equality Labs. So you essentially see a convergence of everybody who hates Hindus coming together behind the scenes to run a new agenda called caste, where they see that they can achieve something. You see the credibility of the Islamist is so low in America that if they just target Hindus and Indians as Islamists, they get exposed fast. Just look at the Stand with Kashmir movement. They poured millions and millions of dollars after Article 370 was removed. And they could not even get a resolution passed on it. I mean, they brought a resolution and they could find like 10 or 12 Congress people to support it after spending millions of dollars. So you need the caste is a crutch that these people need, because it's the most efficient tool with which they can hope to target and divide the Hindus.
So, talking about the Kashmir movement or the Kashmir genocide, would you like to give a little bit of brief to our viewers about the 1971 Bangladesh genocide that happened and the work that you did on it? You've done a remarkable job, but I think our viewers need to be aware of what it is and what that resolution is all about.
Well, the resolution is important not just because, and I don't know if the viewers know that last month there was a resolution that was brought in the US Congress by a bipartisan group of Congress people. The bipartisan part is important because America is a divided country. To see both parties come together to bring a resolution is very important and shows how important the resolution itself is. That addresses and recognizes or demands to recognize the 1971 genocide, majority of the victims being Hindus, being clearly outlined in that resolution, even though a lot of other people were Muslims who opposed Pakistan. So the importance of this resolution is not just because it formally recognizes one of the largest genocides of the 20th century, including the largest genocide of the Hindus in the 20th century. It also puts on notice many organizations in America, about whom we were discussing now, because these organizations had office bearers who were convicted as war criminals in 1971 by the Bangladesh government, not a Hindu government, not the Modi government, but by the Bangladeshi government, which is not by any means a Hindutva government. So that is very important, because whether it is Council for American Islamic Relations, whether it is Islamic Circle of North America, Islamic Society of North America, and its proxies like Hindus for Human Rights and Indian American Muslim Council, they all need to look and see why they associate themselves with individuals who are convicted war criminals and still have the balls to come and blame Hindus of being Islamophobic. That
I
was
think
my.
I want to add to that, Utsada, and ask you a question, if I may, as to whether you're facing any sort of challenge to the idea of adding Hindu to that genocide. Because I know that the Bangladesh genocide has already been recognized in many places, but is there a challenge to recognizing it as a Hindu genocide also, which is something we need to make sure, because targeted killings of Hindus has happened, and there have been statements like that by Kennedy and others, right?
First, I think the Bangladesh genocide itself had not been recognized much, including not by the UN nor by the US. So that itself was not recognized. But to include in the language the way we have included the fact that the language says Hindus were overwhelmingly targeted for genocide. That was so we went through a month-long process of finding out the exact percentage of Hindus that were killed, but we could not point out a number that would give the exact number. Like, I was literally spending nights after nights for months along with a lot of people, hundreds of people, trying to research that information. So what we ended up saying is that we all knew, including the congressmen's offices, including leftist congressmen like Ro Khanna, they all knew that the number would range somewhere between 75% to 85 to 90%, which were Hindus. Yet they were afraid to put that number on because of the fear of being targeted by Islamists. So the language says overwhelming number of victims were Hindus, and I think that is a number I'm very comfort. That is a language I'm comfortable with, and we want should to go forward with this language and get it recognized. But there was a lot of opposition, including from the congressmen who sponsored it, because they're always afraid that they will face a lot of backlash from the Islamists.
So I'm sorry, Anjali ji, I took up that.
No, not at all. These are very important questions.
Because I felt like while we're discussing about Hinduphobia, I know that there has been a concerted effort to keep, the Hindu genocides out of the framework of discussion in UN or anywhere. And I think recently when Trump announced that, he will build a Hindu Holocaust museum in Washington, D.C., I think that is somewhere we do have rays of hope that there is a possibility of aligning with some, international people and governments to bring this issue to the fore, that there has been probably the longest standing genocide in the world today is the Hindu genocide, and that is being documented for many, many years by websites like hindugenocide.com. And I want to, at some point when we have it, also add to what Utsada said about, why and who are the players who are targeting us. I think, that is a framework that we do need to, why are we being targeted? I think they do have one more angle to it.
And let's not forget about the Kashmir genocide, which came into the forefront after the movie, uh, the Kashmir Files, was released. I think prior to that, it was just a hearsay. I mean, people knew about it, but it was like, okay, he said, she said. That's been my impression.
Yes.
So I just hope I'm happy that there is.
Not really, Anjali, because there are documents, there are reports which have even numbered the number of Hindus killed in Jammu and Kashmir. But I think, I want to mention that I think sometimes because of our religion being so diffused and diverse, I think we Hindus have been our own enemies sometimes. And I think from within, there have been governments in the country, there have been Hindu ministers in the country who have actually preferred not to bring out those reports because they could cause harm to certain areas, to certain people. I think that is a kind of lopsided thinking. I think a time has come when that should stop. And I'm glad that the present government, to some extent, has been standing up against such beliefs.
Very true, absolutely. So, talking about Hindu phobia, since you brought it up, Richa ji, how do you think that the Hindu American, I mean, the Hindus residing in the United States, how do you think they're responding to it? What kind of response do you see?
Yes. So I do see that, we have now at least some organizations we have formed. First of all, first thing first, we have no longer been shying away from our Hindu identity. We are no longer saying, we're South Asians and, we'll just, light the diya and not worship our gods, on Diwali and things like that. We have started to assert our identity. I think I always go back to the word Nivedita that you said, docile. We're no longer docile. We're not aggressive, but we are assertive, and that again, after so many, maybe years and years and thousands of years, maybe of being, that little cog in the wheel, we have suddenly started to face, not just stand up to who we are, and that is obviously causing the Hinduphobia to a great extent. And I think Utsada has pointed out all of those forces that have combined to come together to make sure that the political voice or the identity that we are building is attacked in some form or the other. It has been attacked at, as we discussed in the very beginning, from all angles. So how are we facing up to it? I think because we are more assertive now, we are, at least for the first time, I see that we are engaging. We are engaging in a civic manner, with the polity, with the political leaders, trying to present our case. We have gone into the academic framework and built NCRI a discussion when the dismantling global Hindutva, which was a sort of a barbed attack on us, as Hindus, because you can talk about caste, you can talk about Hindutva, and you can talk about swastika. In the end, will be an attack on Hindus. It is just a sort of barbed attack. It is a concealed attack on us directly, even though they kept saying that this attack is not on Hinduism. Eventually, what they said is that unless Hinduism is dismantled, only then will Hindutva be dismantled. Whereas, as Hindus, we don't see a difference. We just see Hindutva as a Sanskrit term, and Hinduism as more of a English term imposed on us. But I think we are engaging very well. I think at this time, like I said, we have also taken the legal angle through some of these organizations. They are challenging this from the American perspective as to this is unconstitutional to attack a religion directly through policy like caste discrimination policy. It's direct attack on us. So we are targeting it. We are being targeted at every angle, and we are facing up. We are also engaging with the media as much as possible. On social media, we've built a voice. Luckily, we do have some voice now because of social media, Twitter and Facebook, and all of these, platforms. But I think we do need a big media presence to really make a voice heard. Like, I just want to go back to what Utsada said about, how we are being attacked for caste, just like race. How has caste suddenly become a mainstream word? It's because of books like Isabel Wilkerson's book, right? So those kind of attacks are happening. And I want to just, who are the players? I do feel that these are players who are trying to take over America also. And Hindus being the bulwark of Silicon Valley, of our, the corporate world in the United States, to attack Hindus through caste, critical caste theory in academia is working very well for them. Critical race theory and critical caste theory together really work very well for them to build this breaking America force that is being definitely used in America. I think it's a very long conversation on that, but definitely we are in the line of fire, not just because we are Hindus, but I do see this as also the changing world order, going back again to circling back to the geopolitics of it, that, the rise of India at this time, from every which perspective, the rise of Indo-American relationships, where other countries may be facing the heat of that. I think that definitely will play into the political and geopolitical aspects of it.
So, talking about the voice of Hindus, or the presence of the presence of the Hindu voice in the social media, and them standing up for themselves, or Hindus being in the line of fire, one important thing that comes to my mind is the cancel culture. And I know we don't have enough time, but I just want to tell the viewers that we are going to have a follow up episode. This was This is our episode 5, and our episode 6 will continue on this topic because this is such a vast topic, and just one episode is not enough to cover all aspects. So maybe you can uh, say just a little bit about the cancel culture as well, and we can continue with that in our next episode. I'll leave that open to Utsav ji, Richa ji, or Nivedita ji, whoever wants to talk about it.
No, I
So
would like to know about it from either of you.
So, from the American perspective, the cancel culture it has been going on for a while. So, I think it started off early on when the Trump election campaign was going on, and it kept building because that was the time when it was cool to do cancel. You can cancel anybody, and you blame them for being a Trump supporter, and you cancel them. So that was how it started. It became mainstream. But at some point, with all these movements, what happens is because they are not driven by rationale and solid factual fact driven narratives, it immediately starts to boomerang on the same people from where it starts. So the people who started the cancel culture back in 2016, by 2020 realized that it was hitting them back in some ways, and they were getting canceled. I mean, Hollywood is a very good example of how they promoted cancel culture in the beginning until their own producers started getting canceled for things they did completely immoral or illogical 10 years ago or 15 years ago in their own careers. So this is a boomerang. I think movements like these cancel culture movements go away because it becomes an equalizer very soon. In like 5-6 years, it becomes equal on both sides. Both sides are canceling each other at that point. And I think what is important to take away from the cancel culture for Hindu Americans and Hindus around the world in general is the fact is to remember where we fit in that cancel culture. So I clearly remember when the Confederate generals were being demolished as statues. Their statues were being demolished all over America. uh, I did make a point that you guys are a little late. I mean, we did Babri in 1992. We canceled our colonial rulers in 1992. So we started it before you guys did, and we had a laugh with the liberals who were doing it. So it is a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways, and once you realize that, you become much more rational and much more logical about it, and then it goes away. So that's my
I do
point.
want to add a couple of things to it. Cancel culture actually does stem from the wokeism of the Marxist left and the illiberal left. The Economist had this article last year, The Threat of the Illiberal Left, right? And so the whole idea of the illiberal has emerged because those who claim to be liberals are actually the ones who are canceling all of us at this time. And they're using the concept of critical caste theory or critical race theory. And let us not forget, as Hindus, we have had a tape on our mouth for many, many years. We are not going to sit down and be canceled anymore. Whatever you try, we have never been part of the mainstream as much as we are trying to get onto, through social media or other organizational platforms for the first time. So I totally agree with Utsada there that, we are this cancel culture, I mean, it is, there is a boomerang right now, then I think we don't fit in anywhere in that boomerang. We are here on the side, and we may be a little pipsqueak right now, but we are definitely building our voice. And that, I think, to end it to the point of Hinduphobia, I do want to say that just as everything has to go through politics and policy, we have to build Hinduphobia, anti-harassment policy into all the political and policy frameworks in this country of the United States, the great country of United States of America, where I think everything at the end, it's a great equalizer. Things do fall in place, and that is the great hope of for us at this time.
So, well, I would like to thank Utsav ji, Nivedita ji, Richa ji for this wonderful, enlightening conversation. I really enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to the next episode. Thank you so much once again for joining us on Bharat TV for India Rising. Thank you
Thank you, Anjali ji. You did a fantastic job with us. Thank you.
Yes,
so much.
thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
So, viewers, in the end, I would like to say that Hindus have been subjected to persecution and systemic violence, not only historically, but also in the current times. So, persecution can take many forms. Some examples are forced conversion, some documented or mainly undocumented massacres. The same story continues with the genocides, like the 1971 genocide of Hindus in Bangladesh, the 1990 genocide of Hindus in Kashmir, demolition and desecration of temples, and this destruction extends to educational centers. So, what is left? Actually, maybe not much, but it's very important that this great civilization is valued and preserved. Thank you so much, viewers. Have a very good night. Until next time, see you. Bye bye.